Welcome back to the Runners of Louisville segment with Swags. I'm here today with Abby Petter, one of our elite team members at Swags. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and completely honored that I was asked.
Yeah. We're super excited to have you. I know Allie and I have talked about doing this interview for a while and excited about how your season and everything has gone. So we wanted to start back at the beginning. Like, what was your childhood like? What was sports like for you? Kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was not a runner. A lot of our team members within the elite group seem to have grown up in running or started at a younger age, but I did not. I started swimming at the age of 4 on Plainview swim team and really ended up swimming for my entire life, all the way up through high school, and I swam competitively mornings, evenings, kind of the whole deal, and chose not to swim in college. I could have, I had gotten burned out and kind of decided it wasn't for me. So didn't really start running or anything until later in life. So most of my childhood, when I think about sports, was revolving around swimming. I did some tennis lessons. I played soccer at a younger age, but for the most part, I was a swimmer.
True athlete, for sure.
Yeah.
Runners are always like, man, swimming is so hard. And it's the opposite. Swimmers are like, but running. I'm like, no, you have to breathe in water.
Yeah.
It's harder.
It is hard.
Yeah. So what did swimming teach you? Did you do more endurance side of it? Were you more sprints?
Yeah, I was definitely more of an endurance athlete in swimming, which I think has boded well, in my running life. I did long distance events, so 500,000 a mile. It involved a lot of extra laps. So there were sprinters, and at practice, I would be one of the ones that was in the pool a little bit longer, swimming longer, longer distances and longer periods of time, which, I think that's probably why I like being on the road so long now. It's just the way I'm wired and kind of where my comfort zone is.
Yeah, definitely that endurance side with doing the marathon and
Yeah.
everything so much. But what got you into running after being a competitive swimmer and then going to college and then life from there? What got you into it?
Yeah, so I started running post-children. I have 3 kids, and my first, after she was born, I didn't run. But by the time my second Luke was born, I kind of got the itch to figure out something to get myself in shape. And something that a lot of mothers can probably relate to is postpartum depression, which is something that I battled with pretty significantly after all 3 of my children were born. And once I recognized what was going on and I had to find something to clear my brain, something to empower me as an individual, I kind of got an idea that, hey, maybe I'll go running. And after Luke was born, I decided I was going to train for a half marathon, which I did. And when I did it, I broke 2 hours, which for me, being the first person in my family to do something like that, it was a huge victory. We all thought, oh my gosh, she just ran a half in under 2 hours. And so that kind of got a little bit of a spark going, but I ended up having a 3rd child, Simon, and he was a few years behind my older 2. And when the postpartum set in again with him, I knew that I was going to have to find another outlet. And I remembered running that first half really was something that made me feel good. It got me fresh air. It cleared my brain. And so when Simon was about a year old, I ran another half. And that time I ran it, even faster than the first time. It was somewhere, between the 140, 150 range. And my family just, Abby, that's crazy. Like, you're so fast. And, to us, it was really fast. We weren't runners. We didn't know what that meant. We just knew that I got out there, I ran 13.1 miles, and it was pretty quick. And so a few months go by, and I start running a lot, and I realize not only am I loving running, but I'm feeling really good mentally. And I've learned that running is really what gives me the mental health that I need, not only to be a better mother, but to be a good friend, to be good at my job. And so really that's how it started, because at that point I decided, I think I want to run a full marathon. And by signing up for that first one, it got me on a path where I was able to consistently go out the door, have a reason, have a goal. And it was a goal that was for me. And it was something that, I wasn't doing because other people were expecting it. It was something that I knew, this is what I want. This is what's going to force me to set some time aside, because I spend so many hours of my day being a mom, being an employee, being a wife, and running has really been that it thing for me to think, oh, you know what, that's what makes me kind of feel like I'm accomplishing something that is truly for me, and it makes me feel good.
That's awesome. What was like crossing that first finish line? Do you remember like that half marathon? What was it like?
It was crazy. And I think that's what a lot of runners say is like kind of your drug of choice, that high that you get crossing the finish line and knowing that, you know, I just trained for this, I did this, and I'm finished. And I, you know, I might have been in pain, but I don't even care anymore because I'm finished. And then you look around and you see people cheering. And then, you know, for me to look over and to see my husband, and at the time, 2 babies on his hips, on my hip and his hip, and all the pictures looking back, and it's like, wow, you know, that was incredible, because not only did I finish, but look how happy they are for me. And look, I'm also setting an example for them. And maybe at that time they were too young to understand, but that's, you know, rippled into many, many more, and my kids have seen me cross many more finish lines.
That's awesome. I know, like, to have your kids there and be able to show that accomplishment of what you did is such a great example and super cool to see.
Yeah.
What do your kids think about your running now? How old are your kids?
I have a 9-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 12-year-old. They think it's cool. You know, it used to be harder to get out the door and run because it would be more of the mentality of, oh, mommy's leaving, like I don't want mommy to be gone. But now that they're older, they're involved in sports themselves, they get it. They understand mommy's going to run because she loves to run, and we like to watch her run. And it's funny because they tell all their teachers, like when I just ran Boston, you know, last week, it was all the teachers knew, and the whole school is cheering for me. It's one of those situations where you can tell they're proud, and you can tell it means something to them now because they watch me every morning go out the door. They see me come in sweaty. They see me come in hot. Sometimes I'm on my treadmill, and they hear me, you know, going after it for hours. And so, you know, I think if anything else, they understand, like, hey, mom has worked really hard, and she's able to do this race because of all the time that she put in. So my hope is that by them seeing all this, it's showing them that if you work hard, great things will happen.
For sure. And what discipline, you know, teaching them too. I know
Right.
You said they're involved in sports and everything too, but seeing it from you and seeing that legacy of like, hey, I want to work hard. I want to be good at my job. I want to be a good mom. I want to be a good wife. I also want to be a good athlete.
Yeah.
And still being able, like, you don't have to give up that side of you. Like, you can still do that. And just that mental aspect too of like, you know, this is for my health. This is to push me. But you do need that space, and that's
Right.
really cool to see.
Absolutely.
I know we just did Bourbon Chase, and Simon, when he got home, he knew you had Boston and you're coming back, you're sore, but he came back, he's like, how are your legs?
Yeah.
Like, just that impact of, hey, he knew you worked hard, but he was wanting to make sure you were okay, but you could just tell the excitement.
Right.
He was excited to see, like, how you did this weekend and was there to cheer you on.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So with running, you've done 27 marathons over the course. Like, what has gotten you, you know, from that point of doing your first one? Like, what was your first marathon training for it? Did you train alone, or were you with other
Alone.
people?
Alone with music, and I went out to the internet and found Hal Higdon's basic marathon training plan and followed that as best I could. And this was back in October of 2014. I ran Chicago for a charity, and you know, complete beginner, did not know what I was doing. And I remember, you know, the last long run having to walk, jog. It was one of those situations where I didn't know what was coming. I just knew that last training run was hard, and that running a marathon was probably going to be even harder. Went out my first time, complete rookie, did not hydrate right, did not feel right. I'm sicker than a dog in the park at Chicago. And my husband's complete shock. You know, he shows up with 2 beers in hand. He's ready to celebrate, and I have no business celebrating at the time, just very sick. You know, a few hours pass, and, you know, it's one of those situations. He's like, Abby, I hope you got that, you know, check off your bucket list. We need to, you know, be a one and doneer. And I'm like, okay. Well, the next morning I'm hobbling through the airport to come home, and I look at my husband and I say, you know what, I want to do another one. And he's, you what? I think I want to do another one. he's like, but you can't even walk. But it just speaks to that reward. And you talked about crossing a finish line. I think once you do that, and you really, feel and experience all the hard work come into just one moment of making it happen and finishing, it is worth it. It is hard to get there, but I've yet to go for any run, whether it's a race or a training run, and when I get home and take off my shoes, I can never remember a time where I regretted it. I might regret if I went too fast or too slow. Could I have done that a little bit better? Maybe, but never once have I thought to myself, I wish I didn't go for that run. Every single time I go for any kind of run, I am so happy I did it. And I think that's how I continue to run all these marathons, is because, one, I'm setting an example for my children. It keeps my mental health intact, but it always has so much gratification that comes along with it that there's never any reason not to do it. If I'm healthy enough to do it, it's just, there's too many incredible things and experiences that come along with, the journey to get to the finish line, that I would do it 10 times over.
That's awesome. What helps motivate you to get up on those early mornings? I know you have a busy work life, even just getting here today, the amount of things that you did today in your day, but with work, with your kids, with school schedules, everything like that, what motivates you to get up on those early mornings?
I think knowing that I'll feel better is usually the first part. I think any day that I don't run, I don't feel like I'm as energized. I don't feel as focused. So I always know that if I force myself to get up and do it, I'm going to have a clear head going into my work day. I'm going to be more patient with my kids, more patient with my husband. And, that's usually the primary reason. But second to that is the running community and the friends. We have a Friday morning group, and that's one of the highlights of my week. I could have a ton of miles or a killer workout, but usually in my mind that doesn't even really matter. Just knowing that I've got a group of friends that I get to go out and talk with for an hour or 2 hours, that's priceless. I mean, it's very rare, that you get that opportunity to meet with friends for that long because of work schedules and family schedules. And so running does that. Running creates that chance to conversate with other friends, in an unsolicited environment where it's just us in the outdoors, and we can go out and talk and vent, and it can be about work. It could be about, tough life situations. We've had friends that are battling cancer. We've had losses, but we run through it, and that's what makes it easy to get out the door.
Right, for sure. I know, those runs have been, super inspirational for me, and just being out there, but also just to have that community. We all know we're going to run. So, that's one thing I love about the running community in Louisville, and just running in general. Find that community.
Right.
Because you're always, if you're going to go for a run anyways, you might as well meet up with some friends occasionally, because you're going to get it in. You might as well do it with a group of people.
Yeah.
And be inspired in the process.
I agree.
Yeah. So with your marathons, with 27, that's a lot. What have been, as you've kind of gone on from your first one onto your 27th, what are some things that you've learned along the way, whether it's nutrition or just how to pace yourself, training plans, stuff like that? I know that's a big question, but what are some key things you've learned?
Yeah, I've learned so many things over the years. With a marathon, pacing yourself is really important. And I say that, and I laugh as I say that, because with the last one I just ran in Boston, I almost did the opposite. I went out and I took a risk. I went out probably faster than I ever have, but I had trained harder than I ever had. And so I had the mindset with that particular run to have no regrets. So that is something that I've learned with every run. And in that respect, it might not be going out fast. It might be indulging in the experience. It might be a certain goal and having no regret and trying to get to that goal, because sometimes the goals aren't always time-based. Sometimes the goals are just, to be there and to finish, depending on where you are, or where I am, in terms of, how in shape I am, physical. For example, there was a time in Boston on the 2018 Boston Marathon. I had gone into that race, and during training I had thrown out my back, and so I had a pinched nerve in my back, and it was towards the end of the training cycle, and at the time, I thought, I'll work it out, and I kept going, and so I peeled back on my training, But going into that race, I learned a lot about that race at that particular day. Long story short, I did not finish. That was of all the marathons that I ran, I've finished 27, I've started 28. And that was the only DNF I've had. And, for people that don't know, DNF in running is do not finish. It took everything I had just to get to the 10K mark. The pain and everything that led up to it was unimaginable. I probably honestly should never have been out there to begin with, but I always have that mentality of no regrets. And I'll never forget the night before that race, I told my husband, we're at dinner, we're sitting there in Boston, there's all the hype of what the Boston Marathon brings, and I said, honey, I don't think this is gonna work. And we decided as a couple, you know what, we're here, try. Because you're going to be more upset if you didn't step out the door and try than if, you didn't even attempt. And so we agreed. And so going into it, I knew, but I had no regrets. That's sort of my motto. And I went out and I tried. And I had to walk off the course. And that was one of the most humbling moments. And I think I probably learned more from that race than any race, just from the sheer fact of appreciating what it is to be healthy, appreciating what it is to be capable. And so I'll never take for granted a finish. Because I think sometimes as runners, we get so hung up in, did you PR? Did you meet your goal time? Did you do that, do this, and do that? And I always do get a little bit upset if I don't meet a goal time, but then I always bring myself back to, remember all the finish lines you've crossed, but the one I remember most is the one that I didn't. And so I think that's, one of the biggest things I've learned is just enjoy the journey. You can hydrate well, you can have all these different nutrition tactics, but at the end of the day, if you're not maintaining your health and you're not having fun and you're not able to stay on the journey, then it's not worth it. So if anything, I try not to get hung up on times, but more to focus on experiences and why I'm out here doing it.
Right. That's the thing about the marathon.
Yeah.
It can be a great day, or you just never know until you get on that line.
Yeah.
Halfway through the run, it could be great, but you just never know until, like you said, you live with no regrets, and what a great way to live and show up every day.
And the marathon there's a huge margin for error. You're out there for a long time, and your mind can play games on you, and you just really have to. You can learn a lot about yourself, in a 3 to 4 hour period, and obviously it's enough to learn and enough excitement for me to keep doing it over and over again. But it's certainly a new challenge every single time you go out there.
And what's the marathon, what makes the marathon what you want to continue to do and pursue? Why that over another, race distance or something?
I think it's the relaxed nature of the race, in the sense that I like to have time to think, to settle. And it kind of goes back to my days as a swimmer. I've never been one of those people that likes to feel rushed, likes to have to do something really fast, at least in this realm of sports. And my personality is just not it just have to hit it hard fast. And I think that just shows. And so for a marathon, for me, I love the opportunity to be out there and to have to power through for an extended period of time, because it's not only a very strong physical challenge, but the mental challenge that comes with it. And I love that, because I've yet to run any single marathon and not been challenged in some way. It never gets any easier. I mean, and running 27 is a significant number, and I've never stepped across the finish line and thought, that wasn't hard. There's always something very hard about it, whether it's a hard day mentally or it's more on the physical side. I love that challenge. I love the fact that it just pushes me both mentally and physically, and you can't really get bored with it because of that.
For sure. What do you tell yourself mentally when you're having those hard training runs or you're having that hard race? What gets you through? Is it a certain mantra, or is it just something mentally? How do you get through it?
Yeah, I always tell myself, and I think a lot of people do this, live in the mile you're in. If you start thinking too much about whatever, if I think about what I've already done and what's left, it can become really overwhelming. And so if I focus on the now and what mile or what segment of the workout I'm in, I'm able to get through it a lot easier instead of, looking at it in its entirety. It's just sort of like the marathon. If you think about 26 miles in its entirety, it seems like a lot to swallow. But if you go out and you tell yourself, okay, get to the 5K, and then you hit the 5K mat, and you say, you know what, just get to 8 miles. You run 8 miles every day training. It's no big deal, And then when it starts to get tough, I tell myself, Abby, you run 70 plus miles a week. You can do 4 miles in your sleep, So a lot of it is just for me breaking it into smaller parts, because eventually those smaller parts will make the whole. It's kind of like your basic math. You think about fractions. Eventually, if you add it all together, you're going to get to the finish and you're going to get to the total. And it's a lot easier to digest it that way.
For sure. I could definitely see that mentally.
Yeah.
I know different races, that's kind of been what I've had to do. Haven't done a marathon, but
yeah,
definitely taking lessons.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to any kind of hard run or any hard exercise. If you just break it down, where it seems simpler, I think it just makes the physical part not seem as bad.
For sure. With the marathon, your training, I'm sure, has changed over the years. What are you doing now, or what have you done in the last couple of years to kind of get you to this next point or next level with your training, improving all the time?
So that the last year and a half, I've really taken a turn in terms of pushing myself in training, and I think I attribute a lot of that to being invited to be a part of the SWAG's elite team. I've learned a lot from you all that have been running longer, have had coaches, and I see new ways to push myself in different types of workouts and different strength exercises, and really just not being afraid to try new things. It used to be a situation where I didn't really know what to do, and I would just find, like I said, plans on the internet. But I've been trying more intense training regimens that some of our teammates are doing. A lot of the workouts are kind of instructed. It's what we call the program is a VDOT Jack Daniels program that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and it's been pretty amazing to see what my body can do. And so the workouts are much harder than anything I had ever done years ago, and I'm starting to see the results. I think I've got big goals in my head, but I do firmly feel like I can get there by following some of this more aggressive type of training plan, and also trying different kinds of workouts and getting out with our teammates and not being afraid to chase people. It used to be where I was in the very back, and I notice now I'm able to keep up with people. So if anything else, it's a great confidence booster, but I've definitely gone from, trying to follow a basic plan to getting more aggressive about trying to attack a goal that, I might not ever meet it. But if I try all these different tactics and do more speed workouts and, increase my mileage to the degree that my body will let me, I'm just going to see what happens. And if nothing else, I'm enjoying the fact that I can see I'm capable of more than I thought I was. Because some of the stuff that I did in my last training cycle, I never would have guessed I could do. And some of it came easily, and some of it didn't.
It was definitely intense because you're sending them to me sometimes. I'm like, hey, what workouts are you doing, to maybe see if it lined up, if I could meet. But you were putting in that hard work and the training and the amount of speed work you were doing too.
Yeah.
Where 2 years ago, being on the elite team since inception of it, just seeing the difference of like how your training and intensity is getting like more aggressive, but how you're attacking it every time and getting stronger and enjoying the process. You can tell you're like, okay, this workout is really hard, but I'm excited to see, what happens, and you're killing it to see every time, like each cycle of training, just getting better and improving so much more.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So you have had a few marathons the last couple times. What was it like going through COVID? You trained a lot on your own, but you had 2 virtual races. Tell us about like both of those experiences, you run by yourself a lot and then have a team as well, but doing the marathons and everything on your own.
Yeah. So the pandemic has brought so many interesting things to all of us, but running, and it has obviously been no exception. Yes, I train a lot of days by myself. I usually have at least one day a week where we meet as a group, but day in and day out I run alone. But running a marathon virtually, or with a lack of crowd or pacers or a group running with you is a whole new dynamic. I did Boston virtually in 2020, and there was a great group of us here in Louisville that met up. We all decided to do it on the same day. But even with a group of 15 people, we're all running different paces. After the first handful of miles, we separate, and I'm running by myself. The great news is you could see people running, passing because it was an out and back, but that was tough. It was humid, it was hot, and running alone for a marathon like that is, you have to dig deep. And to be in a situation where you're training really hard, because when COVID hit, that's about the time I really started getting aggressive with the new training that I was doing. And I've been hanging on bated breath for a real race to test out, how I was really going to be able to bode when I got in a field, of other competitive runners. I had crowd support, and I had two races that were happening during the pandemic, and just not an ideal situation. Both of which I did PR. So to me, that was, I was showing that I was doing things the way I wanted to, in the sense of I'm training really hard and I'm dropping time. So the reward was there, but it still just felt, it didn't feel as gratifying, because there's something about a real race and the hype and the crowd, and seeing pace groups and having people around you. There always seems to be a group that kind of moves together. And I didn't have that until just about a week ago. So it was a really cool experience to finally have a normal race back. And Boston definitely did just that.
It was cool. During those two races, I know Allie got to cheer on at one, and Josh, your husband, and then at the other one, you're just by yourself. And to see PR on that, to be mentally tough enough to be able to do that and to keep yourself strong, because you're out there by yourself so many times, and it's just and then having Ollie be there for just a mile or two.
Yeah.
But other than that, you were on your own. So just cool to see how you just kept improving, and that just shows you as an athlete being able to continue and go through that. But on into that, getting a marathon that you're gonna actually have other competitors. And Boston, what a way to come out, be able to have a real race again, and it be Boston, different time of a year. But what was your mentality going into Boston just over, a week ago?
Yeah.
Week and a half?
A little over a week. My mentality was, leave it all out there. You've been waiting 2 years for this. You've been training so hard, and you've got so many people ready to, cheer for you. And it wasn't even all, people that were there. I had two of my best girlfriends go with me, but I had so many people here back home sitting and watching and refreshing and waiting. Not because I don't think they were so bent on me getting a certain time, but they knew. You all knew. You were part of the cheer group. My family, I had been working so hard. And so I went into that race to leave it all out there. And I did that. It's one of those situations where anytime any competitive runner goes out and runs, you always want to go faster. And I've learned over time, there's always somebody faster, stronger, better. But at the end of the day, I did PR, and so I had to remind myself, yes, you wanted to go faster than that, but you still just ran your fastest on one of the courses that's known to be one of the toughest marathons you run, just because of the dynamics on the course and of the day. So I'm really happy with the results. Went into it, full beast mode. Took it really hard the first half, and I really hurt the second half. But again, I still have no regrets, because if I didn't go after it, I probably would have been more mad at myself than if I would have held back and felt good the whole way. So
for sure, yeah, living with no regrets. You put it all out there. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Being on the side cheering you on, and the group everyone it was really cool
Yeah.
to see and refresh. I love Boston's app. There's the best so far I've seen where you can just refresh and
That's
they're
what everybody's
giving
saying.
you like stats. It's like automatically coming up every 5K, so it makes it really fun to get to cheer people on when you don't get to be there and watch it.
Yeah.
What has been like the running community for you in Louisville? Like being on the Swags Elite team, like what's the community of that like and then just the running community as a whole. There's so many different groups in Louisville that are great to be a part of. But where have you kind of found that community for you?
Yeah. Well, I'll say if you go out to Seneca Park any Friday, Saturday morning, it's inevitable you're going to see a lot of very familiar faces. And the running community in Louisville is incredible, and it will swoop you in. Like if you start running and you start meeting all of the great people that actually hit the roads, it's mind-blowing how welcoming and how open-armed the community is, because we've got people running all different types of distance, paces, but there are just so many groups of people that are willing to cheer for you regardless of what your goal is and lift you up to think that you are superhuman. Just going into Boston, there was a group of guys that we all run with locally, and they had me convinced, breaking 3 hours was going to be just a breeze. And you know what? I felt very much alive and capable of that. And so to me, I think that's incredible because it just goes to show that there is always somebody around here cheering for you. And second to that, our elite team has been an incredible experience for me in the sense that I've met so many different people. I'm the oldest one on the team. I always joke that I'm Mamaw, but I've learned so much from all of you that are so much younger than me because I'm pushing myself in ways that I never would have. And it's just a really neat atmosphere because there's always somebody that's willing to give you tips or jump in on a workout or, go for a walk. We've had runners that get hurt, and instead of running, we'll grab a cup of coffee and walk the Seneca Loop. So it's one of those things where it doesn't always even become about running. We always now have, where we say we're doing life together. We're not just doing runs together. And so I think that's what the running community brings to me is, it's a full life experience. It's not always the fact that I'm putting on sneakers and running laps around the park. I'm putting on my shoes, but I'm going to go and broaden my horizons, and I'm going to strengthen my friendships. And that is happening all the time.
For sure. You get some of your hardest moments, I feel like, in running. Just the sport in itself is hard. So being able to dig deep with different people and be vulnerable in running, but also in life, it's pretty cool. You just had Boston. You also just had Bourbon Chase. So what a double to have this 200-plus generally mile relay. Being on a team, you've been on a team for several years, the Fast Phillies. What has that been like? What was it like this year to, do that double? You're a Masters runner, so this just happened, super exciting. 40 years old this year. I'm sorry if you didn't want everyone to know, but just to see, you're still improving. You're still getting faster and just building upon year after year. But it does take, your body longer to recover a little bit.
Yeah.
It takes, I'm younger, but it still takes me longer to recover now than it did a few years ago. But just to get through that part and then doubling with Boston is hard. All the hills, from all I've heard, it just tears up your body. So how were you able to come back and do that? And what's Bourbon Chase like for you?
I was able to do the double because I knew I wasn't in it alone. We had 3 other teammates doing the same thing, and then so many other guys and gals from Louisville that ran Boston and were also jumping in Bourbon Chase. So going into it, I told myself, you know what? I'm not the only one doing it. So surely it's going to be able to be done. I'm not the only one crazy. We're all jumping in on this together. My body did not recover well. 3 days between Boston and Bourbon Chase did not bode well for me in the sense that I did go into Bourbon Chase really sore. It was a very mentally challenging weekend for me. I I probably could have done a lot more for the team had the circumstances been different, but it was another day and another no regret. So at each leg I ran, I would run as hard as I could, and just as fast as I could find speed, I lost my speed. So it really spoke margins to where my body was. But again, that experience of Bourbon Chase and running with a team of women, as long as the team accepts, the fact that I'm not, in my best form, I would never miss it.
Yeah, you've been on Fast Philly's team for?
Oh goodness, I've run at least 4 years with the team. It could be more than that. See, turn into a master. It's hard to remember, but yeah, it's been at least that many years.
And what is the experience like? What's the race like generally, or like how is it every year? Obviously different, but you have 3 different legs. You're running 3 different times, maybe in the afternoon, once in the middle of the night, maybe again in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So a different experience.
It's exhausting, but it's a situation where you just get more tired as the night goes on. But you running on adrenaline, myself and our teammates, we always find a way to power through. And I think, again, it just goes back to kind of why we're out there. We have these 2 vans full of women, and we're all great friends. We're all, in different stages of life. We have moms. We have, people that aren't even married and are young. And then we have masters. We have all these different age groups. But everybody is out there just pushing themselves. And I think that's what keeps you going. Like, regardless of how sore you are, how tired you are, it's do it for the team. And that's always my mentality is my team's waiting for me at the next exchange. Just keep moving your feet. And then when we finish, it's amazing. It's amazing to see a group cross the finish line. Normally you do that alone, but to see a group of, 11 of some of your very best friends run across the finish line with you, that's a unique experience.
For sure. And just hearing I know I did it this weekend, but just hearing them cheer as you get to like your first leg's over with, but hearing that cheer, it was just like everyone coming across the finish line every time. You did it as a team. You can't do it on your own. When that last runner on your team brings the anchor leg in, it's pretty cool to
It's amazing.
see. And to have that experience of 12 women getting to do it, or just a team in general. Not often do you get to do running as a team sport. So that's where Bourbon Chase is unique, and
Absolutely.
that it's a full team thing. So as this marathon is over, what are some goals or dreams of what is running going to look like? Obviously, still marathons coming potentially, but what are some things that you want to achieve or dreams that you're looking to do?
Yeah, personally, long term, my goal is to just stay healthy so that I can keep running. I know what it does for my mental health and what it does, to keep kind of the wheels on the bus and keep, everything feeling great holistically. So really the ultimate goal for me is to stay healthy and to be able to run and be out with my friends. I do have the itch to break 3 hours in a marathon, and before I stop with all the crazy workouts and speed, I am getting close enough where I think it's, what at one time was a stretch goal probably can happen before I hang up, the fast carbon-plated shoes. So that's a personal goal. But I think for me, running, I do it because I hope to inspire people. And, maybe it's my kids. Maybe it's going to continue to push them to work hard and know that, the best things in life don't always come because you're just in the right place at the right time. You have to work hard. And I hope that, people around me are inspired too, because I'm never going to be the fastest one, and I'm never going to be, the front of the pack. But by me being on the road and, balancing everything that I do balance and being a friend to other runners, I hope that it, lights a fire under other people. So that really is why I run, is because I love it. It makes me happy. But I also hope that, it's setting off a fire on for somebody else. It's making somebody else want to get out and try, because I started out not being a runner, and so it just, if anything, when you look at me and my journey, I hope it shows people that you can do it. You can do crazy things if you put your mind to it. I went from having babies and never running to finishing 27 marathons. And so I hope that shows people that, great things can happen if you work.
What an inspiration. I know you inspire me, inspire other people that get to hear this, but just the people around you, whether it's your kids, like friends at school, or different teachers, or just people you come in contact with. Like, you are inspiring, and what an awesome journey that you're living. So thanks for coming and having this conversation with us for our Runners of Louisville segment.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am so humbled to be here. Definitely don't feel worthy when I think about everybody else that's been here. So it means a lot that you guys thought to ask me.
Yeah. Well, you're worthy. We're super excited and honored to have you.
All right. Well, thank you.